Hi, I thought today we'd start with a little review on subtraction that includes zeros. I know you did a little bit of this yesterday, but I wanted to just go over some of the things that can get a little tricky and frustrating, quite honestly, when we think subtraction should be simple. And you know what? Sometimes it's harder than multiplying and dividing. So I thought I'd go over a couple of these things, and I thought I'd point out a couple things also before I started. I don't want to get ahead of myself, for it's very, very tempting. I feel like a lot of people want to go, I'm just going to get all of my borrowing out of the way, then I'll go back and do the subtraction part. Problem is, people then tend to borrow when they don't need to, and it's going to mess everything up. So you really just need to borrow as you go. Starting in the ones place, always start there, because a lot of times, you know what, you're not going to need to borrow. So I look at the first one and I say 0 minus 0. I love it when it starts out easy, meaning I don't have to borrow anything. I'm good to go. But now the guy in the tens place, he goes next door and nobody's home. You can only borrow from a neighbor. So he goes next door. This is the guy that needs the help right there. He goes next door, no one's home. So now if he goes 2 doors over, he can put those 2 neighbors together, and really it's 80. You could look at that as 80 since nobody was home there. So if I take 1 from 80, I know if I'm dealing with money, if I spend $1 from 80, I'm gonna have 79 left. Now the 1 I borrowed will go with the 0. And I like to cross it out and put a 10. Some people just like to put the little 1 there. Either way, whatever works for you and keeps you from making mistakes. Now I subtract, I go 10 minus 3. I'm just starting again from the tens now. And that will give me 7. 9 minus 4 is 5. And 7 minus 7 is 0. I can put the 0, I cannot put the 0. When the 0 ends up in the front and there's nothing else in front of it, you can drop that 0. It even looks a little funny. Now you can't drop this 0, because then you would change the value. It would be no longer 570, but it would be 57. You can't do that. All right, so let's try another one. Again, good news. 8 minus 8, 0. Don't have to do anything with that. Come to my tens place. He goes next door. Same thing. Nobody there. He goes next door to them. So now we get to put those 2 guys together to borrow from, since the first guy alone wasn't enough. If I borrow 1 from 70, I get 69, and I give the 1 to the 0. This time I'm just going to put the 1 in front of it so that you can see it both ways. And now I know that 10 minus 4 is 6, 9 minus 2 is 7, 6 minus 1 is 5. And I'm going to encourage you to always remember to put your commas every third digit over from the right, because this represents your hundreds. This is going to be your thousands, then your millions. We won't be getting that big, but that just gives you kind of an idea. I come over here again. I find I don't have to borrow. So 9 minus 2 is 7. 6 minus 0, well, that's good news. I don't have to borrow again. I go to 3 up, I'm going to have to borrow. I go next door and somebody is home. So the only thing I have to do is borrow 1 from him, give it to the guy that needed the help. I continue to subtract. And again, I remember to put in my comma. Last one, you can still see it. Again, good news. Don't have to borrow. I do have to borrow. 0 goes to the 7 because somebody's home. He borrows 1. Give the 1 to the 0 that needed the help in the first place. 0 minus 2 is 8. 6 minus 0, didn't have to do anything with that. And then 6 minus 5 is 1. And again, I'm going to put my comma. Now, the inverse relationship was mentioned where you could check your answers. And this is a really good tool. I mean, I know that we've got calculators, we can always check. But when you aren't afforded that luxury and you're not supposed to be using a calculator in math lab, and you wanted to double check that you got it right, you can add the bottom 2 numbers and you should get the top number. If you add the bottom 2 numbers, you should get the top number. If you add the bottom 2 numbers, you should get the top number. I'll just try 1. So I am saying that I should be able to add my bottom 2 numbers and make sure my numbers are lined up. I'm never going to make a mistake because I didn't line up. That makes me crazy. And I'm going to add them now. And I'm going to add them now. And I turned out with 8,000. And I promise you, if I add these 2 numbers, I'm going to get 7,008. And so on and so on. The same is true of addition. When you are adding numbers, if I added 463 plus 258, just randomly came up with that. I add 8 plus 3, which is 11. I can't put 11, so I carry my 1. 6 and 5 is 11, plus 1 more is 12. I carry my 1, 4, 6, and that's 7. Now, to check an addition problem, the inverse operation is the opposite, which is subtraction. I take my total, 721, and I can subtract either of those numbers. If I subtract 258, I should get 463. If I subtract 463, I should get 258. That's kind of cool. So I'm just going to try the smaller number because I think it's probably going to be easier. I'm going to subtract. 1 minus 8 can't be done. So I go to my neighbor, I borrow 1, makes him 11. So I'm not going to keep borrowing, I'm going one at a time. 11 from 8 is 3, 1 minus 5. Now look at this. I'm going to have to borrow again. This little guy needs help to subtract 10. So he goes to his neighbor, takes 1 from the 6, and that will become an 11. 11 minus 5 is 6, and 6 minus 2 is 4. And you'll see I got the right answer. So I hope this helps because today you have a little bit of an assessment on adding and subtracting, and zeros will be included. And you might get a little extra credit if you're able to check your answer with the inverse operation.